Hi friends, happy Tuesday. How was everyone's weekend? I had such a good weekend, y'all. I feel like we are back in full life swing, and I went from, sure many of you are in the same boat. I went from not seeing anyone for it's been like a year and a half outside of, I went to see my mom a little while ago, and we had friends over this weekend. We had a game day, whatever, with our neighbors. A friend drove in from New Jersey. Actually, our podcast guest, Manisha, who, if you haven't listened to this week's podcast episode, she is brilliant. We had a really great podcast episode go live. Coincidentally, I also saw her this weekend. So nice to be able to see her in real life. When we were talking about how nice it is to have the Zoom, but also have the in real life connection. So I got to see her. We were in the park. We had rosé and pizza. It's just one of those weekends where super lovely and just such a reminder of the importance of connection. And I think something that really important for all of us to be thinking about and remembering to recultivate. I think we've all done such a great job as entrepreneurs being mindful throughout COVID and through lockdown and finding ways to connect. But I'm also really interested to see I think we're already having repercussions, some people are, from the lack of connection over COVID. And I think it's just a really nice reminder for all of us as business owners, as humans, the importance of human connection. It really is a core human need. I think I talked about this on one of the upcoming podcast episodes we have, but how important connection is. They've done studies when people don't have connection, it can actually cause real physical harm. And for smaller children and for, as you're growing up, how it can emotionally some people, but even physically, and have real health repercussions. So I think as the world's opening back up, and hey, whoever just joined live, and now if you're watching on the replay too, I think just a nice reminder. I was just, this weekend, it was almost like a overwhelmed seeing people again, but just such a reminder of, we have the online connection, which is such a gift, but being able to see people in real life, how important that really is for your mental health, for your physical health, and remembering that that's important for your business too. That's not what today's live stream is about, but something I'm always reminding my clients: taking care of yourself, self-care, loving yourself, physical care, taking care of your brain, taking care of your body, but also having fun. These are things that are directly connected to your business and making money. I think it's Sydney Stuffield who talks about taking care of the golden goose. You are the golden goose if you're a business owner, meaning you're the golden goose that lays the golden eggs. If you're not taking care of you, it's really hard to run a business sustainably and to create profit. I also sincerely, this is a little on the woo side, but I sincerely believe the energy of joy and fun and connection is also what manifests clients and money. So little side tangent before we dive into today's topic, but feels important. Stephanie, hi. So nice to see you. So nice to have you live today. So let me get us on track for today's topic. So today, it's an interesting topic. I think what I'm going to share is going to sound so simple, but I want to give some preface to it and give some explanation as to why it's important. I feel like I'm going to share a tool with you that I find is really, really powerful for connection. I find it's really powerful for sales calls. It's really powerful for coaching calls. It's really powerful for creativity. I pulled some stats up for you. It's really powerful for your health. And it's one of those very simple things. It's not gratitude. I feel like this is where gratitude might come up. And Stephanie, if you have a guess, I'd be curious to hear if you could have a guess on what this is. I also find that sometimes we think simple means too easy or that it doesn't work. I find this is one of those tools that you can have in your tool belt that I find is actually quite challenging. And I know people don't trust this tool that much. And I know, because I talk with clients about this, sometimes there can be a lot of resistance around using it because it's quite an uncomfortable tool. So we're gonna break that down. So when I share what it is, I'm gonna tease it out a little bit or talk about the importance a little bit. But when I share what it is, I know you're gonna be like, really? That's it? That's the thing that's gonna help me on sales calls and make more money, and wait, what? But I'm gonna share some of the reasons why. I'll share some of the brain science behind it, because I love me some brain science. And then I'll give you some practical applications, and I'll give you a practice I actually used to use in my acting days that is really powerful for coaching and sales calls as well. So what I preface this with, for anyone who didn't, Stephanie says being authentic. That's not what we're going to share, but being authentic is absolutely one of those things that is very simple, but not always so easy to do, and directly correlated to the money in your business for sure. So that's a really good guess, and I co-sign that as an answer, but not the tool we're going to use today. I would call this a tool. What I preface this with, if you're not on my email list and you didn't get the email or you didn't see the blurb around this, I was prefacing this with, have you ever been on a sales call and someone's had an objection, you you don't know what to say, or maybe you had a client call, whether you're a coach or you're a done-for-you service provider, you're a designer, or maybe you're an OBM, maybe you do something. I have clients who are lawyers and CPAs all across the gamut. Have you ever had a client call with someone, you're like, I just don't know how to handle what they're throwing at me, or they're super frustrated and I don't know how to diffuse this? I don't know if that's ever been the case for you. When you're watching the replay as well, to let me know. Maybe you've had a sales call and it's not even an objection, but like, I just don't even know where to go in this conversation right now. And if you know me, I'm not a huge fan of sales scripts. I do think frameworks can be very powerful. If you haven't signed up for Sell Out Without Feeling Like a Sellout, I'll drop a link for that, because we do walk through a framework for a sales call. And this is a tool you can definitely use for a sales call that you don't have to memorize anything for. The other time I find this tool can be helpful, I don't know if any of you have ever noticed this, if you're ever feeling a little nervous. Maybe you're doing a live stream, maybe you're doing a presentation, maybe you're having one of those sales conversations, maybe for those of you who do, now that the world's back open, I know some of my clients have in-person meetings or in-person presentations, some of them are speakers, and when the nerves kick up, it's almost like we want to trip over our words, and like we either don't know what to say, or it's like so many words come out really quickly. Anyone else ever been there? I know that's something that can happen for me. So any of those situations have ever occurred for you, this is a tool that, again, it's going to sound super simple, but it's really, really powerful, and I'll explain why. This is also a great tool for those of you who are like, I got nothing left when it comes to creativity. I can't think of any new content ideas. I have no new ideas for my next workshop. I have no ideas for my course. I feel like I'm not innovative. I don't know how to tap into creativity. This tool will help you there as well. Stephanie says the pause, breathing. You're very, very close. The pause is the closest one. So I'll let the cat out of the bag. Thank you for playing and guessing, Stephanie, because you're like right on it. And it's what you're saying with the pause and breathing. It's the power of silence. The power of silence is so underrated. We do not give it enough credit, and we are so plugged in as human beings, and especially in the online space, I think, because there is so much talk about content, and in sales, I think we think we're supposed to, well, I don't personally think this, but I think there's a lot of teachings where it's almost like you have to convince and figure out how to get someone to say yes, and I think that's where sales gets a bad rap. There's so much filling in all of the silence with noise. We're always listening. We've got our earbuds in. I mean, y'all don't have to out yourself, but who hasn't ever noticed, especially I think during COVID, where it's almost like we're so glued to our phones that when there is a moment of silence, you're in your phone looking at something, and there's never actually a beat of pure silence. The power of silence is incredible, and the power of silence and cultivating very consciously more silence. And I'll give you some examples of how in your sales conversations, in your coaching calls, in your content, in your life, it is crazy how much that is directly connected to the results in your business, to someone saying yes and hiring you, to having more creativity and having new ideas, to having a more insightful, powerful call with a client, to being able to diffuse stressful situations. I pulled up here because I just rattled off a couple examples of like where silence is powerful. But I think actually before I share that, I'll share where I first learned about the power of silence, because I think this will be a helpful context for you to understand. So I think just if we like zoom out a little bit first and we think about the power of silence, when we are sitting in silence, what do we allow our brain to do? We allow our brain to like actually think, the power of thinking. I think this is another one of those underrated qualities as business owners. I'm often talking about how important your brain is and investing in your brain and your thought process and mindset. Mindset it's very important, but another really important part of your business is your ability to think as a CEO. When you create silence, you will give yourself a chance to think and consciously think, not just run on autopilot, whatever ideas are just streaming through your brain. So, subconsciously, I think most of us always just have like chatter going on, but actually to slow down enough to think and to even think about your thinking. This is where innovation comes from. This is literally fires up different parts of the brain. Hey, Marie, nice to have you here. It's really fascinating. they've done, I'm actually going to pull, I'm going a little out of order here, but I think this will actually be really interesting for everyone to hear. This is not like my research. This is a ton of research that they've done in terms of what silence can do for you. Silence can lower blood pressure. Silence boosts the body's immune system. It benefits your brain chemistry. 2 hours of silence can create new cells in the hippocampus region. So that's the area of your brain that is linked to learning, remembering, emotions. Silence is where we process our emotions, right? It's really hard to process through emotions if you're constantly in noise, if you're constantly in chaos, if you're constantly, putting input into your brain. Really, really hard to learn to think, to process emotion. Hey, Courtney, nice to have you live. Nice to have you here. Oh, I've got such good people here on today. I always have good people on, but I love you all. Silence lowers your cortisol levels. So cortisol is what's released when you're in stress. It promotes good hormone regulation. This goes on and on and on, releases tension and stress. So you have to think, if that's what silence does for you, silence is also where creativity comes from. I find it very challenging to come up with new creative, innovative ideas when I'm constantly listening to noise, right? I need a little silence for that. We'll talk about some practices for that in a moment. But if that's how powerful silence is for you, and there are literally studies that 2 hours of silence can help generate new cells into the hippocampus of your brain. Imagine then if we think about your potential clients, we think about your paying clients, and we think about what happens when you start to incorporate silence very consciously into your conversations. Think about what creating a gift of a little bit of silence can do for your work together, can do for facilitating a decision-making process like sales. It's kind of mind-blowing. And I think what's fascinating is so often when we're thinking about a sales conversation, overcoming an objection, we're thinking, what do I need to do? So often we're thinking about, how do I navigate this sticky situation with a client, or how do I come up with a new idea with them and help them brainstorm through this problem, right? We're almost thinking like doing, and we forget that one of the most powerful gifts we can give another human being, and one of the most powerful tools you have in your tool belt, it literally doesn't require any memorization or studying, is giving the gift of silence and utilizing the tool of silence. Because here's what's super, super fascinating. When you are silent, Stephanie said pause, right? When you create a pause, think about this on your side. When you create a couple second pause, a little beat of silence, that's when we can shift from reaction to responsiveness. The same thing happens for the person in front of you that you're having a conversation with. But here's what's super fucking fascinating to me. I hope this will be as exciting to you. They've done studies, they've done brain scan studies. When we talk about ourselves, it lights up the same part of our brain, that the reward center of our brain that lights up when you do cocaine, or when you have sex, or when you receive money. They've also done studies that people are willing to give up money in exchange for talking about themselves. Not about other people, but talking about themselves. We as humans love to talk about ourselves. And I think some of the research suggests that this is because it's sort of like an evolutionary way that we connected with other humans, which was really important back in the hunter-gatherer days. We had to be part of a tribe. We were talking beginning of this live stream about the importance of connection. So people love to talk about themselves. And that lights up the reward center of their brain, meaning it feels really good for someone. So you have to think, if you're having a conversation with a potential client on a sales call, you're having a conversation with a current client and you're brainstorming ideas, or they're really frustrated. If you're cutting off their ability to talk about themselves and to talk, you're actually shutting down that reward, that feel-good sensation for them. And if we think about, let's just use sales calls as an example. One of the most important part of sales is not about what you say, it's about how you leave someone feeling, right? When you have a sales conversation with someone, it's how you leave them feeling, and it's, do they feel heard and understood? If you leave someone feeling good, what I find, I'm sure there's so many people who talk about this, right? They're not going to remember as much as what you said on the call. They're going to remember how they felt on a call with you, or on a Zoom with you, or in an in-person conversation if you're doing a presentation. What we know is, if someone can talk about themselves, that literally lights up the part of their brain that makes them feel good, the reward center part of their brain. One of the easiest ways to leave someone feeling good and to help them feel heard and understood is to sit in silence. right? To create silence to let someone else speak. I'll give you some practical tips on how to use this tool, but just so you can understand, like, this isn't just like, oh, this is like a fun thing to do, let's talk about how to be quiet. This literally is linked to how, as humans, we operate. This is human psychology. When I talk about myself, it makes me feel good. If I talk about myself to you and you listen, I'm associating that feel good, like what I just had that reward center in my brain get kicked up with you. And here's what's fascinating with the reward center in the brain. The reward center in the brain is also where we get addicted to things, right? When I get dopamine hits, when I feel really good, I've never done cocaine, but like, it's the same part of the brain if you were to do cocaine. That is also where we're like, I want more of that thing because it feels so good. So without being manipulative, without having to convince anyone of anything, without having to be sneaky or yucky, if you can create silence and let someone speak about themselves, you can help them convince themselves, help them feel good about themselves, help them feel heard and understood without having to have some, like, not that you don't have to have like a clear offer to sell them, and we're not discounting that and the importance of being in integrity with what you're selling, but it's really fascinating how that can do the heavy lifting for you and create so much safety in the call as well. And sales is also all about creating safety, especially if you have a high ticket offer. Creating safety where someone feels heard, understood, and safe enough to give you money. I see comments and I'm gonna come back to this. Stephanie says, I love the awkward pause. People get so uncomfortable. Yes, I'm gonna talk about that. You are priming me so perfectly. I love it, Stephanie. Courtney says, yes, that silence piece on sales calls. It is so huge. And I love that both of you have experienced that. So I'll speak to what Stephanie's talking about with the awkward pause and the silence piece on a sales call. We can just talk about how to use this a little bit. I'll talk about this on client calls as well, and I'll give you some more. I got all sorts of notes here I want to talk about with silence, which is funny because it's a not doing thing. But I think to what Stephanie says is that awkward pause people can get very uncomfortable. And I think sometimes we think when people are uncomfortable, that's a bad thing. And I think what's really powerful is remembering, I always think about this as a coach. One of my jobs as a coach is to be willing to sit in discomfort with someone else, to be willing to be like, you're uncomfortable, cool. I am here to sit with you in this discomfort, so it doesn't have to feel so uncomfortable, so you don't have to sit in it alone. I think that's one of the biggest gifts as a service provider when you're walking someone through any kind of work, even if you're not a coach, being willing to sit with someone in their discomfort when they're going through some sort of transformation, which whatever you're selling, if you're in a service industry space, you're selling some sort of transformation, right? You're taking someone from point A to point B. There's usually some discomfort in transformation. When you're willing to sit in that discomfort with someone, it is such a gift. And it really creates that safety of like, I got you, I feel good in this. But it can be very uncomfortable for people. Here's what I find though is fascinating. When you take that pause and you are silent, whether it's a sales conversation or a coaching conversation, you don't have to be a coach. You can, do other work, but most of us are having some form. I just had a conversation with my team. I wasn't coaching them, but we were still having conversations. When you take a moment to be silent and you take a moment to pause, I find that is usually when someone says the thing they really need to say. But what happens most of the time in conversation, when we're not mindful of cultivating intentional pauses, intentional silence, most of us are so quick to jump in with the thoughts in our brain. We've figured out the answer, especially in a sales conversation. Y'all know how you always know you can help someone before they know they're ready to invest. It's like we always know on a call where it's like, you're my person, I know I can help you. And so it's so easy to want to jump in with the answer, want to jump in with how you could help, or want to jump in with something outside of business. If you've ever had a conversation with a loved one, who's ever experienced that, where it's you have thoughts going on in your mind where you're listening, you're so excited to jump in with your thought about something. But two things happen when we do that. When we're in our head and we're so excited with I know the answer, I know I can help you, here's what I'm going to say next, what happens? That's me demonstrating silence. But what happens is we're no longer listening. We're not listening actively anymore. As soon as I'm up in my head thinking about what I want to say to you in a conversation, I have shut down my listening. Remember, listening, part of the gift of silence is truly and actively listening to another human. That is the magic, in a sales call, is helping someone feel truly heard and understood. I call it hearing in the silence, hearing beneath the words, hearing what someone isn't saying. So if we can get to that kind of listening, right, we're shutting off the noise in our brain. The other thing that happens when we're in our head that way, right, and we're so quick to jump in with the answer, we're not taking that awkward pause. We're not taking that moment to be silent. We're not actively listening, and we jump in with our words. We often unintentionally cut off someone's thought process. And what I have just found to be true over and over and over again, coaching calls, podcast interviews, sales calls, the good stuff someone wants to share, it usually takes someone a moment to get there. I don't know if anyone else, does interviews and interviews people. I was just talking about this with a client. We were talking about like just an interesting phenomenon with interviewing. I find it sort of like when we're done and then like, you have anything else to share, anything else you want to say? As soon as it's almost like the pressure's off and we're done, like that's when the moment of gold is. It's similar on a sales conversation. I know it's almost like when they think they're done, if I can give them one more chance to talk, like that's when the good stuff comes out. And I think this is the case for all of us. Like it's almost like we got to get like I always call it the bad pancake, but like some of the batter like off of our brain. We just have to like get some of the thoughts out. But what happens when we're jumping in with what we have to say and we're so quick to know the answer and we don't create room for silence or for that pause, we miss those golden moments. Like so often on a coaching call, not that like the whole coaching call isn't magic, but so often it's like those last few minutes where it's like, we just got to like, this is the nugget, like this is the thing. But if you don't allow for that and you're jumping in with your words and it's like silence is uncomfortable, I better just like jump in with my offer, jump in with my pitch, you're missing that moment. Which again, remember, if someone is speaking that to you, it's lighting up the reward center in their brain. They're gonna feel really good. They're also gonna feel heard and understood, but it's also facilitating literally hearing and understanding them and understanding how you can support them. And it's just where some of the magic and the insights are. It's where some of like the great new ideas are if you're, doing like more of like a strategy brainstorm session with someone. So what I find can be so powerful is utilizing, I call it the 3-second pause. You don't have to do a 3-second pause, but I'm calling it that because this is based off of a tool we would actually use in acting. So this is what I said earlier I was going to share with you because I think it's helpful to see it outside of business and how like universally powerful this tool is. When I was acting, I was in an acting class where one of the exercises we would do, it was called I don't know if this was a real tool, but this is what my teacher called it. Don't mind me, my bra straps are falling. He would call it the 3-second pause. And we would have our scripts and there would be a section that was literally, it was like beat was written into it. And our job as actors, actresses, was while we were acting in these places was to intentionally create a 3-second pause to practice the art of silence and the art of actively being in silence, listening to the other person, being present. I don't know if any of you like films or like movies or like TV. I'm sure during COVID you've probably watched a lot more. And if you ever watch, good comedy, good drama, if you pay attention to really great work, you'll find silence is used really intentionally, and really great actors use silence really intentionally to make a point, to stand in their power, to have an emotional moment, to listen to what someone else is saying. Sometimes they'll cut away from it. But if you watch a play, you'll see how powerful it is. If you see a really tense scene, you'll notice a really great actor take that moment and that beat. Comedy, it's all about beats, and sometimes someone will really intentionally pause, and that's where some of the humor is. And it's a really interesting thing on the acting side to practice because it's like, oh yeah, right, I could pause. And when you're in it, we'll practice it now in a second. Pausing for 3 seconds actually feels like a real fucking long time when you're in conversation with someone because we are so used to and conditioned to, right? Like talk, jump, like know the answer, jump in with your line, like just right to the next thing. I'm sure all of you know that phenomenon I'm talking about. So we're just so trained for that. So when you suddenly intentionally practice a 3-second pause, and I want to invite everyone here, you don't have to do this on your next sales call, but try it with your partner, try it with your significant other, try it with your kids, try it with someone just to so you can even sit in it, because usually the first couple times you do it, it's almost uncomfortable on your side. So I'll practice it with you now. Before I tell you the next thing, I'm going to practice pausing here for 3 seconds. I don't know if that was 3, it might have been a couple more. I intentionally like not to count because as soon as I'm counting, I'm in my head instead of being present with you. But you can see it's not even that long. Might have been 4 seconds, but it can feel like it's quite a long time, but it's really fascinating when you do that. When we would do this in acting class and you would watch it from the observing side, not being in it, acting, it was really fascinating. We're like, wow, that's great acting. What are they thinking? What are they doing? It just drew you in more. And it was interesting how the moments of silence were almost the most interesting part of the scene, not the words. And I think as actors, actresses, it'd be really easy to think like it's all about the words. But what was fascinating to start to notice was it really wasn't about the words. It was more about what was being said beneath the words. And that's the same thing that's happening for you on a sales conversation. That's the same thing that's happening on a client call. Again, whether you're a coach or not, that's where some of the really interesting, juicy things happen. And if you can have that same interest, when you watch a movie and you're like, what are they thinking in that silence? For the person in front of you, think of how good that feels on the receiving end. Because now we're not talking about acting anymore, right? We're talking about, real life interactions. Most people, again, lights up the reward center in their brain when they're being listened to, when they get to talk about themselves. But most people never get that experience of having that undivided time where someone is just so intently listening to them and creating silence for them to speak, right? Because most people are up in their head just thinking about when they can jump in with the next thing to say. So it's really fascinating how powerful a tool this can be. What I also find is if you utilize this tool and you're smart with it, when you have a call and you're like, I don't know what to say here. Like they just threw something at me and I'm like, whoa, this is a big thing, or I don't actually know my next move, or I'm not even sure how to handle this this objection. It's really fascinating how if you just intentionally pause, listen, you can nod, you can affirm. It's really fascinating how oftentimes I find the person in front of you then just continues saying what they need to say for themselves. So often someone doesn't actually even need a question from us or need us to handle the objection or need us to say anything. So often people need the space to talk it out, or they need the space to affirm what they already believe to be true. No one's going to convince themselves something they don't want, but a lot of times someone does want that spot to walk through it, talk through it themselves. And I find so often, if you're in that position, instead of trying to figure out the right thing to say, if you can just listen and just give someone that beat, it's really, 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 really fascinating. I'll be interested to know if anyone listening here has ever experienced that in a call. I will share from coaching calls. I was talking about this with a client not too long ago because we were just talking about coaching in general and navigating some stuff coming up with one of our clients. And we were talking about the power of silence on a coaching call. I also find this is where you can really, if you want to go deeper with someone, or you want to allow them to whether it's emotional processing or whether it's fleshing out an idea, it's really fascinating how just creating that silence and just, you can, give an aha or nod your head. It's so fascinating to me how that often is more than enough. And I think where this is a little bit of a mind fuck is that sounds so simple. And I think the brain is well, that's so simple. So then that must mean something else must be better. And I can do that, but I don't want to do that because it's almost too simple and too easy. And that can't actually be good enough. I'm really good at what I do. I know, because this is something I'm a human, right? I want to be a great coach. It's so easy for me, but let me really coach my face off. And that must mean I need to come up with more. And we forget that often that is ego talking. And oftentimes, a lot of times, the most powerful coaching, it's almost like having the confidence in yourself to not want to prove yourself or to do all that heavy lifting and to talk through the whole thing. And sometimes the most powerful coaching is just allowing for that space, allowing for that silence for someone to talk. Now, it doesn't mean we don't have to ask questions sometimes. It doesn't mean on a sales call you don't have to direct the sales call. It doesn't mean you don't have a framework on a sales call. It doesn't mean sometimes there isn't a space for giving perspective, or when you're selling that you don't have to, actually sell. That is not what I mean at all. We're not going to have a sales conversation and just sit there like a weirdo silently. And same thing with coaching conversations, absolutely there are times where we have to navigate in different ways. But I do think this is one of those tools that the brain almost has a hard time sitting with and can feel very uncomfortable using, because it almost seems too easy and too simple. It feels like we're not doing enough, right? For any of my high achievers, and if you're here, you probably are a high achiever, I think it can feel very challenging to lean into something so simple. Chloe, hi, Miss Chloe. Chloe just had a baby boy. So nice to have you on. I don't know how long you'll be able to sit on, but so nice to I can pretend see you. I'm so happy to have you here. We're talking about the power of silence, Chloe. Chloe, I know Chloe from my acting days. It's actually really, really funny that she's on here. And Chloe, I was sharing an example of how powerful silence is when you're acting. We're talking about it in business. So I'm just so happy to see you on here. I'm distracted, y'all, because this is one of my nearest and dearest to my heart. And I just know she had a baby, so now my brain went on the baby train. Courtney says, yes, feels like it should be so much harder. 1,000%. Courtney, thank you for bringing me back on track. I think it feels like it should be so much harder. And look, sometimes, again, I'm not saying we don't have, a framework for a sales call. It doesn't mean there isn't certain information on the sales conversation that we want to be asking. It doesn't mean sometimes we really do need to say things and navigate through sales objections. Absolutely. And it doesn't mean on client calls. It doesn't mean sometimes, we're not asking questions, or we don't have to, I have a whole podcast about questions, right? I'm often asking questions. So we're not negating. I'm not saying to everyone here, now get on your calls, just don't say anything for the whole time. That would be a little ludicrous. However, there is so much power in that silence. And some of the best calls I've had with clients are the calls where I'm like, that was fascinating. My job was really to trust myself to sit in that silence and to keep allowing for, that silence and that space for someone to be able to talk through stuff. And I think that's where it gets to be a little bit of a mind fuck, because the brain's like, this should be harder. This shouldn't be so easy. And what I would say is, I don't even know if it's easy. Maybe this helps Courtney too. I think it's simple. I think sometimes the most simple things are also the most challenging. They can be easy, but because of all of that in our brain, there's so much resistance around it. And I think it's sort of like, Courtney, you're a brilliant designer. You're a great, awesome strategist. I'm sure you probably think about it this way. It's great design is really simple. Great strategy is really simple, but coming up with simple design, coming up with simple strategy, not always easy. And so I think that's the piece that gets confusing. Simple doesn't always mean easy, but simple, I think the brain gets confused and thinks it should be more complicated than this. And then that's when we don't trust ourselves, and we want to add on a bunch of extra layers on top of it. Courtney says 100%. And so I think that's a little bit of what this is like. I know, many of you know, I've worked with my coach for years at this point, and she's not inexpensive. I pay her a lot of money every month, and sometimes I am paying her a lot of money to be silent. She asks me brilliant questions. She gives me amazing reflections, right? It's not all of that, but sometimes I am paying a lot of money for the gift of silence and what that does for me, so that I can have that space for discovery. And that is some of the most valuable time in my business and for myself. And so I think it's interesting, I have that experience from acting, where some of the best work has been in those silent moments, and being on the receiving end of coaching, seeing sometimes that's where I have the biggest insights, or, that new innovative idea comes in, or that next aha. I always think with business, right? We're not looking for 180 degree shifts. It's those 1 to 2 degree shifts in your business. And if you're someone supporting someone else in business, or if you're supporting someone emotionally, those 1 to 2 degree shifts in someone's life, that's what changes the whole trajectory of someone's life. I have a bite-sized biz lesson coming up this week about this, but I know they talk about the example a lot with missiles. If you shoot a missile, and if you alter the missile trajectory, how it's being sent, by 1 or 2 degrees, you can completely miss a target, which is really, really not good news. I think about this with sports. I always use basketball as the example. If you're a free thrower in basketball, and I'm coaching you, and I have you do a 180, you're literally shooting at the opposite team's hoop, at their score. I don't know sports terms, but at their hoop, at their side to score. Whereas usually the difference between a slam dunk, or a slam dunk when you jump on it. But the difference between making that free throw, that's the right term, the free throw and missing it is a 1 to 2 degree shift, right? It's a 1 to 2 degree shift in your body. A good coach is going to help someone get centered and grounded, find the silence to trust themselves and to make that 1 to 2 degree shift. It's kind of the same thing here. And I think it's helpful to see that when we're thinking about tools and we think things have to be harder, we're thinking about like the work we have to do. I think so often the brain thinks, well, what is going to be really good then is the thing that's 180 degree difference, like the really like big thing. But so often, what is elegant, what creates great design, what creates grace, what creates the best results, the thing that helps you hit the target, the thing that really works is simple, and it often is whatever is that 1 or 2 degree shift. I'm a little off on a tangent, y'all, but this feels important and it feels connected. So let me know if that makes sense. I want to pull out my notes though, because I feel like there was something else. So I was going to share, so the power of that second pause, really powerful for your calls. I was going to share a couple places where I think this can be really valuable to utilize as a tool and to start thinking about. I'm going to share one other example just for like, just you can think about, because I think this can be really powerful if you work with introverts as well. Just really interesting research I heard. And then I want to pivot just to close out. Let me just see where we're at of time, because we always go pretty long. If you hang with me for a little bit, we'll just spend a few minutes at the end talking about how to cultivate this for yourself, because we've been talking about this all on the client side, all on the, if you're having those sales calls or conversations with your clients. And I want to talk a minute about utilizing this for yourself as well for your creativity. So just thinking about how you can use this tool, what I would say is I would really practice the 3-second pause, the 3-second silent tool. Practice it with someone this week, not someone in your business, like low key, low stress, husband, wife, kids, best friend, just so you can see what it feels like. Because I find a lot of times as you're getting used to this, and if you haven't done it in a while, again, 3 seconds can feel like a long time. And if you're not used to having those pauses, it can feel like, oh, this is weird. And so the more you can practice doing that with just some people you already know, the more it'll feel easy to integrate into those sales conversations or into a client conversation. And I think just thinking about when you can use that, I think it's such a great time when someone is talking, it's like, I just know they've got more to say. Like just even giving a beat to let them keep, like where you almost want to jump in with something, giving that beat to see if someone has more to say before you jump in with your question. You can still jump in with your question. And I think that's the important piece to connect there. It doesn't mean you have to be silent forever. It's just like, can you give that extra beat, that extra moment, that extra piece, that space? Because that space is often where you'll find, oh, there's the nugget of gold. I think the other place this can be really powerful, and this is what I was talking about in the email I sent, for those of you who do live streams, for those of you who are speakers and have the world open, and I know some of my clients are public speakers, when the nerves kick up, there's such a tendency to want to ramble and talk quickly. And if you can slow down and remember there is power in silence, and just remind yourself that, it doesn't mean you don't know the words, it doesn't mean you're not doing a good job. People really listen. It's almost like when you're silent, that's when people lean in the most. So that can be a really powerful tool as well when you are having a speaking engagement. If you have nerves coming up, like yes, you can do deep breathing, but literally in the middle of talking about something, if you need to recollect your thoughts, if you need to slow your heart rate down, just taking a quick pause before you pick up your words again, just like that can be really powerful. I know I've had to do, it's interesting when you're acting, it's a little easier because you have a script given to you. And I've had to do public speaking. When you have a script, you usually have another person with you, I guess is what I mean. So it's a little easier because you can be so in the moment with another person. When I've had to do public speaking, I always find that's a little more nerve-wracking because you're just talking, it's like a live, right? You're just talking yourself and you've got a room full of people looking at you. And I find this can be one of the best tools for grounding yourself back into your body, back into your words, so that your words can really land and impact people. Give yourself that moment to pause. And I will literally if I have to do, I haven't done public speaking in a hot moment, but I spoke at my dad's funeral when he passed away. And what I wrote pause. I literally wrote it as a memo to myself. So you can borrow, it can be that simple. You can put a sticky note on your computer to pause if you need to, because it's that important, and it really helps you slow down and connect to the words than if you are delivering something like a speech or anything to a group of people. If you have to go deliver a pitch, really powerful for a pitch as well. again, remember, because it's not just about your nerves and slowing down, but when you give that pause, it gives people, if you're pitching, I have quite a few friends who are in the advertising world, they have to go pitch their work all the time. If they take a beat and slow down, it gives everyone in the room time to actually listen and to hear and to have a thought about what is being said and to like chew on it before having to go to the next thing. So often we're just rushing through things. And if you're pitching something you need someone to make a decision on, similar to a sales conversation, except for you're doing all the talking, if you're not building in those pauses and beats, it's hard for people on the other side to get into the decision-making process, to get that reward center kicked up in their brain where they're like, yes, this feels really good, which is how we want to leave people feeling. I find another really great place to use this tool is during difficult conversations or negotiations. There's nothing like diffusing a difficult conversation. If you've ever had, a tough client conversation, people get frustrated. We are humans working with other humans. If it hasn't happened to you yet, most likely at some point, because you're a human working with another human, especially if you're in the service, if you have a service-based business, you're probably going to have a conversation at some point with someone who is having a human experience, a human moment, and there is a charge, there is energy. There's so much to being able to diffuse a challenging situation when someone's feeling very charged by bringing in some silence to ground that conversation out. I think our human tendency is to want to go in and fix things for some people. If you're more in the caretaker side of things, I think some people can get very reactive and defensive. And this, we've talked about neutrality, I think, here before, because I'm quite obsessed with it. If you can take a moment and use that 3-second pause, it's amazing how that can bring neutrality for you, so you don't get reactive or just jump right into caretaking or trying to fix or, get angry. I think we can have the pendulum swing one way or the other. But it's also really helpful for helping create neutrality for the person in front of you, because you're not throwing gasoline on the fire that they're already feeling. And a lot of times for someone when they're feeling really charged, it's a little bit of a pattern that they're used to, and they're used to getting, we all have payoffs to the behaviors we have. Sometimes when people have a human reaction that way, they're also used to getting a certain response, which can then subconsciously feel really good. If you can create a pause, you're actually helping to diffuse that a little bit, which can be really, really powerful for those client situations. Other place I would really invite you to use this tool and to think about using this tool is also when it's not a conversation, but those times, and I know everyone has gotten, for those of you who I support clients in Basecamp. If you support clients between calls and you get messages from them, or if you get client emails and you have to respond, maybe you're in the middle of the sales process and you're gonna write a follow-up. Anytime you get client communication, I find, again, what we usually want to do is we just want to go right into response mode or reaction mode, especially if you're supporting clients with anything that is a little more charged. My invitation to you is to think, this is still a conversation. Can I practice the 3-second pause here? Again, it doesn't have to be 3 seconds. I'm calling it the 3-second pause for my acting days because this is what I got as a name, but can I practice the 3-second pause here before I respond? It's really interesting how if you can give yourself that beat, and maybe you need longer depending on what kind of email just landed in your inbox, but that's often I find when we can actually pause and actually hear what someone is saying. And that's often when I find, from the coaching side, I can give a more thoughtful response or an insight that is more helpful than if I just immediately reply. If it's a follow-up or someone I'm having in the middle of the sales process with, just taking that beat, I feel like I can just hear them a little bit more and hear what they're actually asking me, instead of so often I think we just want to hear the surface level words and we can almost go on autopilot, especially if people tend to say the same things to you. So I think it can, again, it's 3 seconds, but it's really amazing how when we can create just a little bit of that space in our own thinking, how different then it can be in terms of the response or the reply that you give to someone on the other side. Okay, let me know if you have any questions about that and how to utilize the tool. Again, I know this is one of those things where it's this is the simplest tool ever, so it doesn't need a lot of explanation, but I want to keep showing you how you can use it, because I think it's also one of those things where it is simple and then we almost forget the places we can utilize this. And the more places you can utilize this, I think the more you'll also notice you create spaciousness in your business, which is a really good thing and feels really good in your business. And I think the more you'll see, this also helps facilitate, again, more of those easier sales calls where people are saying yes on the sales call and you're not feeling like you have to do the heavy lifting or convince people. I think it's going to help you feel more grounded in conversations. I find when you can use that 3-second pause too, there's such a trust you create with the person. It's really interesting how sitting in silence with another person creates trust. Has anyone seen, it's just popped into my mind, this was a short film done, I want to say 5 years ago, with, I think she was a documentary filmmaker, and she had 2 people come into a room and just stare in silence into each other's eyes. And she documented what happened and how often people like end up kissing, like strangers, or like hugging. Like, it was really fascinating. The Kissing Project, maybe? If anyone wants to Google it, I'll see if I can find it and put it in the Facebook group. Really fascinating, but it's just interesting. It's kind of what we're talking about here. Power of silence. I mean, that's also gazing into someone's eyes, which is eye gazing is a whole nother thing. Happened on my first date, and here I am getting married 6 or 7 years later. It is a very, very, very powerful thing for connection. But part of that is also the silence. And I think what's fascinating when I will find that documentary, or it's short, and it's like, I want to say 5 minutes or less, but I'll put it in the group. It's just such a powerful example of the power of silence and the trust you can create and the intimacy you can create, the power you can create in yourself, and the power you can allow the person in front of you to step into. You can really empower a person to speak their truth, to make their own decisions, to trust themselves when you create that silence, when you create that gap, when you let someone speak. It's really fascinating. We're just so not used to it in our world because everything is loud. There's so much noise. It's almost like who can get the most words on the screen fastest, who can jump in with the answer. We're plugged in, we're listening to podcasts, we're running while listening to something, right? We've just always got so much noise. We forget, we just don't see enough examples, I think, of what this, the power of this is. Courtney says, yes, I've seen it, so good. Oh, I'm so glad you know what I'm talking about. I will have to find it. Such a good example of this. I love good art, y'all. So just a couple examples there of places you can use this tool, and would love to hear if you're watching now or on the replay too. If you've used this tool before, how you use this tool, examples of where you've used this. For my parents, Courtney, I know you're a mama. I'm a bonus mom. I will tell you, just this is not business related, but I don't know, if you can parent kids and negotiate with kids, then you can negotiate with adults. Using this with kids is also really powerful. Has anyone ever had a kid who's maybe not behaving the way they should, and just, maybe crossed your arms and sat in some silence and looked at them like, and isn't it amazing how if you just create that moment of silence, like, you don't have to tell a child, you don't have to tell a kid what you're thinking, what to do, what not to do. It's really amazing what happens on the other side. Kids will usually very quickly pick up that they need to stop what they're doing. And it's fascinating what we're talking about here. It's the power of silence. I am going to shift over to the creative part. Oh no, I was going to share one other thing with y'all. Courtney says, absolutely. I'll ask, do you want me to just listen or give you advice? Yes. And I think that's so, I think you're probably talking about with the kiddos, but I think that's also, and I know everyone here is not necessarily a coach, but sometimes I will say to even clients, how can I support you? Would you like me to still listen? Like you can, and I say that to everyone, like you don't have to use a 3-second pause. Sometimes you can just ask. To my fiance, which is like saying, I'll say the same thing sometimes when we're talking about stuff and ask, would it just feel better if I just listen instead of, put up my coach hat or gave advice? Courtney says, or yes, the evil eye, yes. I almost couldn't do it here because I love all you on the other side. So that was some very half-baked acting I just did, but the evil eye is silent, right? And it is amazing how that stare down can communicate so much. So just to really illustrate the power of silence. This was what I wanted to share with you though, because I think this is helpful just as an example. When I was thinking about this conversation, my fiance actually, like ironically, this happens when sometimes I'll tell him what am I talking about? And he was like, oh my gosh, this always happens. He's like, I just listened to a podcast where they were talking about in the corporate world, if you're giving a new topic to a group of people, particularly if they're introverts, because introverts often process a little differently. If you're asking them for, like if you're giving a topic in a meeting, if you can give them 10 seconds of silence before asking for input or before asking for anything else, you can create comfort for them to speak. And it was just another one of those examples. And I just wanted to share with all of you because I think, again, it can almost seem too simple or like, yeah, okay, the whole silence thing, but like how much does that actually do? But I think what you'll notice is we just think that because we're just not attuned to noticing silence and the power of silence, and it just isn't utilized very much because it can feel so uncomfortable to sit in silence. But if you actually start to pay attention, I think you'll notice how many places when silence is used intentionally, how powerful it can really be. Stephanie says, with kids or even adults in my circle, I will simply say, okay, you're right, then nothing else. It works wonders. It's really, really interesting. So a great book that speaks a little bit about this is Never Split the Difference, which is, did I pull the author for you? It's Chris Voss. He was a negotiator, and it's really talking about sales as well, but from the side from a negotiator perspective. But he talks really to what you're talking about, Stephanie, where it's like, to negotiate with someone effectively, we really don't want to make them wrong. We don't want to be like, you're wrong, because what people just want to argue back. And he talks about the power of what you're saying here, which is like, yes, okay. And then that power of silence or taking a beat. And it's just so fascinating to me. And I think we have to remember what's happening in the brain for people when there is that silence. Yes, when people can talk about themselves at the reward center, but also when you give someone a beat, we're all just so used to, it's almost like we're ready to argue with someone when we're in that space, and we think we have to come in with our thing. And when someone doesn't come in with that, when someone doesn't come in with no, you're wrong, or let me tell you my advice, or let me tell you how to think, you immediately diffuse and allow someone to it's almost like their shoulders relax, or they're like, oh, wait, there's silence. I can just actually think about what I actually want to say, and I can speak my truth. And that's just so freaking powerful. That's also, as you know, why I love the power of questions. I have a whole podcast on questions, because questions are a form of eliciting silence and allowing someone else to speak. So it all ties together. But today we're specifically talking about the 3-second pause and silence. I just wanted to see before, I think that was the main thing there. There is one other just book that I will recommend. It's a really short one. Silence is the Key by Ryan Holiday. Just another, if anyone's interested in just some more evidence for the power of silence, that's a good one. He talks more about how it has to do though with our thinking and with our creativity. And so that's what I wanted to put. We're almost at 7 o'clock, so I will wrap this in a bow, but I wanted to wrap this in a bow by now putting this back to you. So again, we've been talking about clients, we've been talking about, sales calls. I also just want to give everyone that reminder of what we were talking about at the beginning of the call, taking care of the golden goose. You are the golden goose in your business. You lay the golden eggs in your business, right? You're the one who is running the business. You are the asset in your business. You have to take care of you. Remember, I shared some of that information in terms of how powerful silence can be for your health. It can, really help you, and it's really fascinating, can help your health. It's also really powerful for you as a business owner. And I think, again, we undervalue and underestimate the power of consciously creating silence and time to think. I know I've done other live streams on this, and I'll have to find some of them and link back to them, but it feels fitting to end here. Your next innovative idea in your business, your next great content idea, your brain space to be able to come up with, a new idea for a client, or to be able to hold space for a client and actually sit in that silence, also means you have to cultivate silence for yourself. And I think it's, especially as business owners grow, I'm growing, I'm scaling. It's something I have to be so mindful of myself, because as you're growing, what you'll notice is there's always more you can do in your business. There's always more you can plug into. There's also always someone else who needs something from you. And that's not a bad thing. I think it's a beautiful thing as well, and it's a gift. But you can, ad nauseum, you could just never stop always being plugged in and basically rule out any space for silence. And I think especially when you can kind of see but this is a client, or this is an opportunity that would make me money, or this is an opportunity to network. I think these almost seem like I can see the immediate rewards here, and carving out space for silence to think. to be creative, to come up with ideas, can almost seem like, yeah, but that's like a luxury. That's a nice to have. That's like a when I get to it kind of a thing. All of these other things need my attention. And I really want, like, we've just been talking about how powerful little beats of silence are. And I really want to invite you to think about if that is the case for your sales conversation, if that's the case for your client conversations, if that's how powerful it is when, you're talking to your kids and you need to diffuse a situation, if that's how powerful it is for your health, and they've said studies on that, we have to assume that also means it's really powerful for you as a business owner. And I would invite you to at least start with creating that 3-second pause outside of conversations for yourself. Take a 3-second pause. Look, set a timer on your phone for a 3-second pause every hour for a day, and just see, like, even if you just started with that, that would create some spaciousness in your thinking. That would create some spaciousness in your day. But I was also really, I know we've done a live stream where I talked about how I carve out, I call it CEO time. It's white space time. It's blocks of time where I'm intentionally not plugged in and I'm in silence. Now, sometimes I will go for a walk or go for a run in silence, but it's time. Sometimes I will sit at my desk or on the bed and just daydream. You know what I mean? Like, sometimes it's in a bath or in a shower, but it's intentional time where I'm not plugged into other voices, other noise on my phone or anything, to literally just think and be with my thoughts and to be in silence. There's no goal attached to it. There's no and I think that's just an important thing to play with there. It's not about coming to an idea or sometimes I will be trying to figure out a problem solving something, and that might be the case. But I really want to invite you to think about, can this be something I start to protect in my business and to see as this is a way I also take care of the golden goose that lays the golden eggs? Denise Duffield Thomas says that, I think. That is not my phrase, but I think it's so good. Can I see this as an act of self-care? Can I see this as a money-generating activity the same way getting on a sales call is? And can I see this as something that I need to start to prioritize? Any of you have read Deep Work by Cal Newport? He talks so much about this, and he talks about how that importance of silence, but also creating space for deep work. So deep work, I'm talking about creating some silence where you're not actually working, but even when you're working, deep work and having silence and not all the distractions from your phone and noise in the background and checking your email 15 times and also checking Instagram and also listening to a podcast, right? We always it's so easy to have all that input, how much it diminishes not just the productivity, because that's a whole multitasking conversation, but it really diminishes our ability to think and to create, temporarily lowers your IQ. And it's really interesting the way he talks about it, how the future of our workforce, our work world, whatever we want to call that. But he talks about how we're just going to see more and more how the people who cultivate the opportunities for deep work, which silence is a part of, and cultivating that space to do the deep work, those are going to be the people who move ahead and have more success. The people who aren't cultivating space for deep work, they're just unfortunately not going to be able to create the same quality and level of work, and they're just not going to be able to grow and create the same kind of success. This isn't to create a story or to you have to work hard. That's not even the point here, but it's just cultivating that space and time for that. And I share that just, I've also today's been book club with Kim Day, because we've had a whole bunch of books that I've thrown at you. But I share that just as some evidence outside of me, even though this is something that works in my business, is something I coach my clients around, but just so you can see some other evidence of the importance of this, because I know this is almost the first thing that gets taken off the schedule and the first thing that becomes non-important. I know, because it's something I grapple with myself, where I'm always well, is this I've got all this other stuff to do. Is this really that important? And I want to share that evidence so you can hear that it really is that important. And I would really invite you to think about, how can I create some of this time and space in my calendar and see this as a money generating activity, just like some of those direct money generating activities like creating content or getting on a sales call might be. So that is what I've got for you on silence today. It was a lot of talking on silence, which feels very funny to me. I hope this was helpful for you. If any of you here have any other questions or thoughts or reflections, throw them at me. But as a recap for everyone now and on the replay, a tool I want to invite you to play with is that 3-second pause. Try it with your friends, try it with your loved ones, try it in a conversation, And again, to preface for everyone, we're not saying you have to be silent the whole time, though that can be very powerful. But just see if you can even practice bringing in that 3-second pause from time to time, and having that as a tool in your tool belt you can pull out for those times where you're like, I'm not sure what to say, or I need to ground back into my words, or I don't know how to handle this. See what happens when you just practice stretching out those moments of silence for the person in front of you and practicing that deep listening. And then I'm inviting you to create some time for white space thinking, silent time for yourself. See that as an act of self-care. See that as a money-generating activity. Hope this is helpful for you. I love you all. If any of you are interested in seeing what it's like to be listened to and experiencing a pause in a coaching conversation, and want some support with your mindset as well as your strategy in your business, that is my jam. Book a call with me. I would love to hear how I can support you. We are pretty full, but I think we have a spot in July. If not, we definitely have some spots opening up in August. So I will drop a link for that. I love you all, and I'll be back next week with another topic for you.